Welcome to Coffee Conversations. This is episode 3. We have a special guest today coming from Nashville, Juan Luchini. And we are just going to talk all things music today, talk about his experience down in Nashville, and just see where that takes us. So I'm joining you from St. Louis, Missouri. And it's Sunday, so happy Sunday to everybody. All right, let's welcome on Juan.
Okay,
now,
cool.
Hey, now it's working. We have had technical difficulties all morning.
That's just life.
But we figured it out. So how's it going?
You know, here we are, just in this weird, crazy time, but happy that, you know, I have a roof and food to eat and some musical instruments to play with, and, you know, friends to catch up with. So
way to stay positive. That's all we can really do.
Yeah, exactly. How about you? How's everything going in St. Louis?
Things are going well. Staying afloat with the school and everything. It has been really cool. You know, same situation here as what you have in Nashville. Everyone's just staying home and, you know, pretty isolated, but making connections how we can. So we'll see what happens. but yeah, doing well. So you play guitar, and just to better introduce you, I'm horrible at this, so my apologies. So you actually taught with Shock City. Gosh, it's been like a year or a little bit more.
Probably more, yeah. Probably close to 2 years.
Wow, really? That long? So
I moved to Nashville in November of 2018. So, and, you know, I was with you guys until probably about that time.
Okay, yeah, so it has been like a year and a half.
Yeah, a good amount of time. Good chunk.
Yeah, so you taught with us for what, like 6 months or so? So you kind of came on as a sub when Tyler went on tour, and we're just kind of our guitar guy. You became part of all of it.
Yeah, I was doing guitar. I was also teaching some voice lessons. I remember I had a student who was kind of doing a combination. So he was doing guitar and voice. Mm-hmm. And we would kind of work through him singing original songs and some covers, and like kind of doing both at the same time, and working on performance as well. So that was fun. But yeah, I remember, I mean, I think I had as young as a 6-year-old student and as old as like a 60-something-year-old guitar player. So it was pretty wide, you know, range of students, which was nice.
And I was your student too.
That's true.
I was probably the worst student you've ever had. I must admit. But I have retained, even though that was a while ago. So once you left, I stopped taking lessons. But I play occasionally, and I've retained everything that you taught me. And I feel very confident that... Wait, did we transition to ukulele before you left?
We did, because things are tiny.
Yeah, because I'm the worst. So now I have like 5 ukuleles, and I feel as though you've given me the skills and the confidence to where I can, if I find the music online, I can just do it. So good. Applause to you for that. So I wasn't totally awful. I did pick up something from it. But obviously there's a lot more to playing than just the basics. So I still need a lot of help.
We can make that happen. We have
There's hope yet.
Definitely make that.
Well, good. So you've been in Nashville a year and a half. Why don't you tell me about what you've been doing in Nashville, how the music scene is, and all that good stuff?
Yeah. Nashville's a great place in terms of like making connections with, you know, different musicians, people who are kind of new to the city, or people who have maybe been here for a while. And what's really cool is that, you know, your next door neighbor might be an assistant for the manager for YouTube or something. Like there's all kinds of music industry people that are here and that live here. And so those kind of connections are really close, and they're definitely closer than it was like in St. Louis, which is super nice, and there's all kinds of live music to see. There's, so many great artists and bands that come through. There's a lot of opportunities for like open mics and places to play, so I think in terms of like a city where if someone is looking to learn about the music industry and what people do like as careers in music, it's a good place to come, and it's accessible. It's not like in LA where maybe it's a little more expensive, or I don't know, there's maybe more of like a obsession around the image or something like that. Not to say that that's not the case in Nashville. I do think that probably almost anywhere people are kind of obsessed a little with an image in terms of their music, which I guess is arguably kind of a distraction from just the music. But it's been a good experience. I have met through. I remember when I came here, I started working at a restaurant called Bar Taco. It's like a chain. Okay. And I want to say like 95% of the people there were musicians or artists. Or
nice.
Stuff,
well, musicians are always doing more than one thing. They're wearing multiple hats at all times. It's just, so that's really cool.
Yeah, you have, what do they call? They call them server songwriters here.
I've not heard that. It's clever. I like it.
Yeah, it's a common thing here in Nashville. But it's great. So like, the first guy I started playing with was a server at this restaurant, and great songwriter, good singer. We wrote some tunes together that I can share with you. And he's a great player. And then I also met this really great singer, this girl, super good songwriter as well. Kind of got the Fleetwood Mac kind of a little bit of country vibe. Nice. And she's also great. So, and she introduced me to some other musicians that I ended up kind of forming a different group with. So in terms of like making those connections, they're all there. And most of the musicians you'll meet are going to be people that are they're working maybe another gig, but like they're trying to do music, so, sure. They're playing as many gigs as they can. They're taking as many, session gigs and like teaching gigs and all that stuff. Yeah, I will say as a caveat, like as a side, like teaching is not for everybody though, you can be a really great musician and not such a great teacher, and vice versa.
Completely.
So that's important to know. And I think in my case, I learned that I like teaching. You also have to like teaching. So, that was an experience I definitely had. And
right.
But yeah, so I was at the restaurant for a bit, and then, being in a restaurant is kind of soul sucking. So I decided to leave that job, and I actually got a job at Lyft headquarters. They have a headquarters here in Nashville. Super nice, just like kind of more like a tech job, but it was really nice and great benefits, good culture, super relaxed, and I was still doing a bit of teaching on the side. Nice. And yeah, the same thing as Lyft, it was probably 80-90% of the people were musicians. So it's like everywhere. There's a lot of musicians here. Awesome. Can either be a blessing or a curse, depending on, I guess, how you see it and really like what you want to achieve, with music and stuff like that. So it all depends kind of how you see it. There are pluses to being in a smaller town, I will say too, like St. Louis. It's just different. Yeah,
because you were playing different gigs here in St. Louis, kind of occasionally, right?
Yeah. So I had, a couple residencies. I was definitely doing a lot more like cover gigs, which was fun. It was a nice way to kind of keep the chops up and like practice regularly, or at least kind of get the performance kind of bug out. But it's different. It's different doing a cover gig at a wine bar than it is, playing your original stuff on a bill in like a dirty like venue. DIY style. So it's just, they're different kind of experiences. One is like, working and paying the bills and, and getting paid to, play, all kinds of covers. And the other one is more like the feeling of like playing your original music for a crowd. And, each one is different. I was enjoying the regular like playing, of gigs in St. Louis and stuff. But I think for me it was a bit soul sucking. Also, this might be a strong word. Just okay. To play a 3-hour gig, a 4-hour gig, like solo, for people who weren't really listening or
Yeah, when you're doing, it's like background noise sometimes when you are doing these covers. Which can be enjoyable. I love that culture in St. Louis. So I would say musicians that are doing that there's high demand for it and a lot of value in doing it. That's part of, that's one of the things I really love about the live music scene in St. Louis is there's so much quality music that's free and it's just like literally in the corner of the restaurant or the coffee shop that you're dining at. And you get like all these really amazing musicians playing that are quality musicians. And sometimes they're playing their original stuff. But regardless of what it is, I think that's, really an awesome thing, how low key it can be. I'm assuming I've not personally been to Nashville, but maybe you can speak on this a little bit more. I'm assuming things are a little bit more official when it comes to gigs and shows in Nashville versus what it's like here in St. Louis?
I guess so. Yeah.
Are there more like established music venues and that's kind of like where people go for music versus it just being a casual thing and like a restaurant? Or is there a little bit of each?
It's kind of a bit of each. It's maybe not as casual as St. Louis,
okay.
Because it is a music city. It's kind of feels more like Broadway or something like that. Like you have these kind of areas that are more allocated for music and live music.
Okay.
One of the setbacks is that it's a bit oversaturated. There's a lot of musicians. There's a lot of people coming and trying to play their guitar for people and share their music and stuff. And one of the pluses of being somewhere like St. Louis is that usually it's kind of this, it's a bit more of a tight knit community, the St. Louis music scene. And if you are on this gig, then most likely you're playing with somebody who knows that guy or that girl from that gig, or like you're going to be invited to play on that gig or whatever. So those kinds of connections, I think, are a bit easier to make in a city like St. Louis. And then not to mention like just getting gigs, I think is easier in St. Louis, like getting paid gigs.
Right.
Because, it's not oversaturated. Here is because there's so many people like trying to make music, and make it as musicians that, anybody who wants to book a band can just do so within a short amount of time. So I think what I really liked about living in St. Louis was that it was a lot more accessible. If I wanted to play a couple gigs a month, I could make that happen and I could make a decent penny, doing it.
Sure.
And I could play with, solid musicians that maybe are also friends. I have more, I think, music friends in St. Louis, or, a good handful. And whereas maybe in a city like Nashville, you might be able to find, let's say you're playing like guitar and singing, you might be able to find a guy to play cajon with you, but he's not your friend. You found him on Craigslist and he wants to charge, $50 and he's going to leave as soon as the gig's over. So it's like, I think there's something to be said about the fun and the casual nature of learning music and playing music. That's a little bit less like serious about like, we need to make money and we need to do a career doing this and we need to get famous. Like, and I think you can see more of that in a city like St. Louis, just some kids in the garage playing punk music or whatever. So that's nice. And I honestly think that is a great way to stay inspired in music, is to not take it so seriously, and not do it thinking that it has to be for somebody or a group of people. In reality, you're just kind of doing it because you enjoy doing it. The process is enjoyable.
I mean, that's the great thing about being a musician is you're literally doing something that you love to do. That's the hope. It's not like you're just getting a job because you have to pay the bills. I mean, sometimes it's tedious and it might feel like that because of certain things you have to pick up, but hopefully for most, they really love and enjoy playing, and it's inspiring, and that's kind of what you kept saying, soul sucking, but music seems like it would be something that's really enhancing you and completing your soul and your spirit, and it's just very encompassing. So that's like one of the beautiful things about music and being a musician. I think a lot of us are very fortunate to have that because it just like gives this new life to everything. So yeah, that's really neat.
They say that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, so I'd fall all the way to China, a homeless girl living on the streets. Help me, my bottle's getting empty, feeling like I'm losing the game of life. I need some help with my self-regulation. Aberration, it's not working out. Not working out. Not working out. Not working out. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
As far as, like you said, I know that you write some songs. You've written some songs while you've been in Nashville too?
Yeah. So I have been writing with a guy I met. He's from San Francisco, but I met him through actually a mutual friend of Tyler, Jackson Stokes. And his name is Daniel Tinnebaum. He's from St. Louis. He's a great musician. He lives out in the Bay Area. So Daniel played for a bit with this real cool, singer-songwriter, kind of within like the soul and R&B realm, which is the style I really like to play and write in. His name is Austin Prince, and I can link you with his Spotify, so you can kind of hear some of the stuff that he does and stuff that I play with him as well. And so we linked up. Daniel told me he was moving down, so I gave him my info. We linked up. We got together, and it was a pretty strong connection. And that's something kind of I realized that is really important is how much you connect with the people you're writing with, just across the board, like. I think you have to connect like just on a social level, but then also like you have to complement each other. So, I was never super lyrical as a writer. I'm always much more of like a melody or a chords progression guy.
Okay.
And that's kind of my forte. And this guy, Austin, he's really solid with lyrics. And so we just have a very nice flow. We can get a tune written when we get together. Every time we get together, we can get one song and then another one started. Awesome. So it develops a good flow, but I do think a big part of that is just because of the fact that we're very compatible and we complement.
That's so important.
So I do think that's essential, when seeking out other people to write with, is finding those people who can kind of fill the gaps for you.
Right.
If you're a singer, get a good musician, or if you're a good lyricist, find someone who can kind of get good chords, because it helps the flow of things. And you have to have the similar goals too.
For sure. I mean, almost like similar vision. Otherwise, I would imagine you'd just be butting heads and it would be a catastrophe.
Yeah, no, totally. And I've experienced that. I mean, the first person I kind of wrote with, is also, when I first moved here, is a great lyricist. And I wrote a good handful of like the music for what he was doing, but at the same time, he just kind of had a different vision, or if he was showing me something and I was proposing like something else, it wouldn't really click, or he wouldn't really get it. And, that's probably also maybe due to like a bit of narcissism, slightly, not terrible, but it's the thing that you encounter.
Yeah.
Service industry and in the music world and entertainment world, we all have a little bit of that. So I do think that that's a big part of it. But that goes to say that you kind of have to leave ego at the door when you're working with people. And then there's also this idea that like it doesn't have to be perfect. Like you can write a song and then it can just be a song that you wrote just for the exercise of writing it. And just because you wrote that one song doesn't mean you're never going to write another song. Like you can continue to write. And I think that's the healthiest ideal to have.
Sure.
In music is just to accept that like whatever you make might not be perfect at that moment. And then sometimes you'll have those really great days where it just kind of flows out of you and it's super smooth and you wrote a really great tune. And each and every song you write doesn't have to be amazing. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I think
you can always come back to it too. I would, it's never finished.
That's true. Well, yeah. And that's also, I would say tread lightly there too, because a lot of people fall into like the loop of perfectionism and then they never end up releasing music. So,
yeah, at some point you just have to say it's good enough, we're walking away. Because you would indefinitely, in anything you create, and I have this problem too. It's like if I step away from it and come back to it tomorrow, I'm going to change things that maybe I wouldn't change the next day or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, that's the beautiful thing about music is that if you can have a different interpretation of a song than another musician, there's all these different spins on how things are done and performed. And that's just, it can create almost a new song. So that's kind of, to me, the neat thing about hearing some of these songs be covered, is you can have, somebody could write a song and it just kind of like never becomes something. And then 20 years later, an artist covers it and it's their biggest hit and it's just explodes. So, I think that's the really neat thing about how music lives kind of forever. It really does.
It's beyond you. Yeah.
It's really cool.
Don't be afraid of that. It shouldn't be like a source of fear or intimidation or like perfectionism either.
Right.
Because just because you made one song that sucks doesn't mean every song you make is going to suck.
No, it's part of the process.
Yeah, it's part of the process. And I think we have to respect that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of rejection in the industry and you cannot let that get you down. Like you just have to, you could have 1,000 rejections before you get accepted for something that you're really striving for. Whether it's auditioning or whatever your goals are. So you got to really have a thick skin and not take it personally.
No, 100%. And one thing I will say is that I think the nature of like being an artist these days is like so different than what it was, 10 years ago. I think that this time of like quarantine in and of itself is kind of a lesson that we need to change how we are putting our music out there. A big thing that I'm kind of gaining from this is the importance of online presence and sharing content, sharing videos, doing like live videos, live streams. I don't think that's going to go away, after this is over. I do think there's always going to be live shows and tours and stuff, but the thought as a musician or artist that like you need to like get signed or get a tour that's going to bring you success, like that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. It seems like a lot more of what is your online presence, how many streams can you get, Can you get featured on different Spotify playlists? And I think there needs to be, this is something that I'm learning about now, and I might actually even go back to school for, but we need to learn about marketing as like musicians and artists.
Yes.
We need to learn to market ourselves. Yes. I don't think we learn enough about that. That's one thing I was going to say is, yeah, we have to learn how to market ourselves and promote and access, you know, the different tools that are available out there, because it's really important. None of us know how to do that. And then the other thing that I'm seeing a good amount of is musicians that work so hard on like their technique, but they don't develop their ears. So I would be willing to argue that it's actually better to have stronger like better ears, and to know what sounds good over being able to play really fast or complex stuff. Because I've seen a lot of great musicians that are very skilled and they put in a lot of practice, but you can tell that their skill level surpasses like their taste. So I think it's really important to, putting that nicely, but it's really important to like hone that and listen to all kinds of music and challenge our ears and really think about what sounds good and
right.
How
I mean,
to,
absolutely.
How to make
like unless you're Beethoven and compose when you're deaf, I mean, you need to have the skills. And he had the I bring that up as a joke because he had the skills prior to that unfortunately happening to him. But yeah, I mean, a lot of musicians are learning by ear, but can't identify what they're hearing and can't identify if something's wrong, or, you know, all of those really strong skills, or to be able to hear, to play with an ensemble or a band. So you're absolutely right. Like that, those oral skills and the ear training is so important. And it's just, it's neglected because, you know, it's so easy with everything being online for anybody to become a musician, but they're not getting trained properly. And you're right. Like, sure, they can practice and they can play elaborate things and, you know, things like that, but they're just missing everything, the meat of it and the theory and all of that good stuff. So there's like, it's almost like a lack of understanding. It's like they're pretending. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, I mean, music is so complex, very complex. And nothing against those people. I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing that we can use music to express ourselves. So if, you know, more power to those people that can play to that level. No, but I'm just, you know, commenting on what you're saying. Yeah, it's so important to develop those skills. And marketing is so tricky right now. Everything has just shifted and changed, even in the last 5 years, even in the last year, in the last 3 months, everything's evolving and changing. So what could have worked previously no longer works, and you just have to stay on top of it. So yeah, developing those skills as well on a personal level is very important, unless you're fortunate to have somebody to kind of do that for you. But, you know, musicians aren't necessarily always the best at those things. We're creative, and, you know, that's what we're good at. And the business side of things just isn't a strong suit for everybody. So it is unfortunate when you see somebody that is so brilliant and so talented, but everything's just not lining up. And that's no fault of theirs. That's just the society we're living in. Everything's, you know, online, and here we are virtually because we can't be in person. You know, everything's just changing so quickly. So yeah, you bring up a lot of really strong points there. Definitely a lot goes into it. I think a lot goes into being a musician more so than people realize.
Yeah, totally. And I think we need to touch on that as like teachers, you know, we need to emphasize the importance of the stuff that's not the music making, because there's so much focus on the music and the execution of the music and all that stuff. And then even like, just because I think it sounds good doesn't mean, with my ears and the like music training I've had and stuff like that, doesn't mean that it's going to sound good for somebody else. Hold on a second. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Just because I think it's not, or maybe, and that's the thing that happens with musicians a lot, is they end up, a lot of them play, like they get skilled or they write music that's kind of for musicians. Mm-hmm. And then they get frustrated about these pop singers, these musicians that are making music, kind of for the masses. And I think it's kind of important to have a balance, basically. I think it's good to touch, you obviously want to express what is inside of you, but at the same time, it's really important to develop skills in marketing and to know what's going to happen, how you're going to promote your music, but then also what's going to happen, like when you're on stage, and then what you have to do to connect with the fans, because sure. You could rehearse for a month and then you could still have people looking at their phones in your show. So like the idea, I think, is really like, how can we access what our fans are going to want, you
almost need to have some psychology training. It's like,
yes, that's what I was going to say.
To understand and like understand how to socialize, and not every musician is good at that. A lot of musicians are introverts, and it's just what is. So
yeah, no, 100%.
All encompassing.
A lot of musicians are introverts, or, and I'm sure that you probably encounter people who maybe don't want to like do a photo shoot, and like there's a little bit of vanity that maybe has to be involved, because the thing is, like, people want visual, like people, right. Consumers, they like what sounds good, but then a lot of it is, what do you look like and how are you presenting that? And so there's a lot of external, non-music related things that go into it, that I think people need to, acknowledge and learn about if they want to be successful musical artists, and you got to face that. That's just something that maybe we weren't prepared for.
Yeah, it's a brave new world, especially right now.
Yes. Oh my God. I know. But I mean, this is why we're here. This is a great example of this interview, and it's a good example of how we're adapting, to the times, and how to what we can do from our houses, to share our music and share our ideas with people. So it's
I
can't
adapting. Imagine this having happened, even 20 years ago, when technology was beginning to become prevalent. It just, nothing would be supported. So we're very fortunate that, as annoying as technology can be sometimes, because it has really taken over every aspect of our life, I'm very grateful that we're in this day and age so that all of this can be possible. Making a lot of our businesses continue to thrive and everything, and have connections. So, that's, I couldn't imagine it another way. But I guess if we didn't have this in place, we'd be outside, yelling to our neighbors across the way and things like that. So I guess you would make good out of any time period in which this happened. But anyways, how about we transition? Can you play us a song? You want to do an original or a cover?
Yeah, I can.
Whatever you want. This is about you. I've digressed enough here, but this is your show.
Can you hear that?
Yeah. Totally.
All right, cool. So I'll play a song that I wrote with this guy, Austin Prince. So what I'll do is I'll text you the Spotify's of the kind of the three artists I was playing with most recently.
That'd be great.
You want to share that with people, whoever's watching or whatever?
Yeah, I'd love to.
can make that happen. So let me just pull up the lyrics here. So yeah, it's a tune I wrote with Austin, and goes something like this. Can you hear that okay?
Yeah.
Could have stayed. Could be right here laying next to me. I know it's late and you're not alone. I can see your face in a crowded room of people I don't know. Looking at my phone like I know your face for sure, with a message saying I'm coming home. And I keep on losing sleep, watching shadows from the trees, playing back the memories on my wall. Ain't heard nothing from you, I've been feeling lonely. It's been raining all weekend, get you out my mind. Where is my sunshine? Waiting for a sign. Sometimes we'll be here, drowning in my thoughts. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Another day's gone, can't run away from. Can't find no balance in my tendency to waste time. Should've left the light on inside. Now I'm getting lost like I've been blind. Think of the wrist, oh how I miss. Took it for granted, our love is remiss, yeah. Ain't heard nothing from you. I've been feeling lonely. It's been raining all week, can't get you out my mind. Where is my sunshine? Waiting for a sign of some kind to appear. Drowning in my thoughts. Yeah. Something like that.
Yay, love that. So have you recorded that one?
We have not. So part of we wrote probably 4 or 5 tunes, and they all just came out super smooth. They're all kind of within that vein. But we part of our plan this spring is to we have a couple musicians we're going to play with, so kind of get a band together, and we're going to demo out these tunes but not fully record them yet. And the idea was to kind of play them around, like cycle them around and play some songwriters nights and play with some other bands and stuff, just to get an audience for a gauge for audience reaction. Sure. And then like adjust the song a bit and then like go back to the studio. So, and I do think that that's a good way to test your songs, like stickability and all that stuff. If you play it for people and then you kind of adjust accordingly, because like I was saying earlier, it's real. Like I would even be willing to argue like 80% of the importance of a song and your music you make is how is it being received. Because ultimately we need people to buy our content. So thinking about that is really important. Not being like, oh, I'm going to write a song that I think people are going to like, because that would be like or something. But
yeah,
like
that would be the wrong approach.
Right. But
although people do that in the pop world, but it's got to be something that you love too. But no, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, like writing your song and then testing it and playing around with it and molding it out in front of people and getting their opinions, like just normal listeners, and then maybe going back and adjusting. So I think that that's a process that like we've kind of come to realize like could work. So we're going to give it a try. We were going to, that was the plan, like pre-COVID. But it's been on a bit of a pause, but what we'll probably still do is kind of demo a lot of these tunes out. I've invested in some gear lately, so gonna be doing kind of more recording and demoing at home. And like I said, fortunately, we have the internet at our fingertips, so we can like share music with people anywhere, which is very nice.
Awesome. Have you done any live shows on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram? You been doing any performances?
But, you know, it seems to be the way to go.
Yeah, I think I haven't really. I mean, it's kind of a personal question to ask somebody how well they're doing as far as tips and everything. But I know people seem to, other musicians seem to be doing pretty well with it. And it's at least sustaining them and, you know, giving them something supplemental right now. And I personally, I've been watching a lot of the shows. It gives me something to do. So as a viewer, I think it's definitely been worthwhile because I love going out and seeing music. So it's actually kind of nice that I can do this at home. Even if my kids are here sleeping, it gives me something to do. So it's enjoyable. So it'd be great seeing you do something like that too.
Yeah, I don't have a job now.
Yeah, maybe.
So I might actually have to start, you know, doing some Facebook Live shows. It's great. It's a fun experience, and I think it's definitely a comfortable way to access people. You know, I was watching one of Tyler's videos, I think last night, and it was something like 70-something people tuned in. You know,
yeah,
that's a lot of people.
His have been doing really great. I've seen most of his, and you know, him and Leah partnering up, and she's kind of behind the scenes producing it has been, I mean, amazing. She's doing a great job. And just the quality of his sound has been really good too. So I think his are probably, out of the ones I've seen, probably been the best, kind of all encompassing. He's got like sponsors now, and he's got a little intro, and he takes pauses and does little commercials. So it's kind of become this like really cool thing that he's doing. So, yeah. All right. Well, it's been good chatting with you. I'll let you get back to your Sunday. Good seeing you. If and when you come to St. Louis, let me know. We'll meet up. Grab a real coffee or something if the world's open again.
That sounds great. Yeah, I might come back. One of my considerations was potentially going back to school. So that being considered, you know, might enroll in WashU or school down there, and maybe come back to St. Louis. So it's a possibility. So I'll definitely keep you posted. It'd be super fun to join again. You know.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be great. All right. Well, good to see you, and we'll chat with you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Take care.
Bye, Juan.
Bye, Jake.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for episode 3. That was Juan Luchini joining us from Nashville. I hope everyone has a wonderful Sunday. I think here in St. Louis, at least, the weather is going to be very pleasant, and the sun's out a little bit, so that's positive. All right. Be sure to follow us on Facebook if you haven't already. We're also on Instagram, and we're going to be publishing all of these videos onto YouTube. We do have a YouTube channel, trying to get that up and running. So follow us all of those places. We're also online if you want to check out our website, all the cool things we're doing. And we will see you sometime next week with another wonderful guest. All right. Thanks for joining us today. Bye, everyone.